Imagine surrounding yourself with incredible women who've overcome challenges, they've rebounded after failures and disappointments, and women who are not afraid to shine their brilliance to make a mark in the world. These women support other like-minded women because they know there is plenty of opportunity for everyone, and that together we really can make a difference, grow our businesses while have fun along the way. This is what Women in Leadership Podcast is all about. Welcome. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. Grab a cuppa of your favourite beverage, pull up a chair, and let's get this conversation started. And welcome to another episode. Joining me on today's show is Karen Grosz. Karen created Canvas Creek Team Building, which uses collaborative art to unite teams. They have worked with over 80,000 people in Walmart's home office, restoration companies, and now their most powerful making work is done with high school student leadership teams. The company has allowed her to delve into leadership and to see what does and what doesn't work, which is why she wrote Quiet Leadership. Specifically on today's show, Karen is going to learn how to harness your potential by tackling through challenges. She's also going to talk about true leadership comes from trusting your instincts and the lessons learned from life's whispered truths, as well as why your passion and insights, they matter, and the importance of creating meaningful change in the world. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get to visit with you.
Oh, me too. And as I was introducing you, I thought I forgot to ask you, did I pronounce your name correctly? Let us just start off with that. Karen Grosz?
Yeah, it's Grosz. It looks wrong, but it's not. It's just Grosz. Yeah.
And what spelling? What nationality is that? What is that?
Yeah, great question. It is Prussian, and they came over during the war, and most people changed it to SS. But our uncle didn't get paid his insurance payment for a sheep that got killed by lightning, and so he changed it back to SZ.
Wow, there you go. It's interesting. I'm sure that you get interested, curious questions about your name, and it's always good to hear the background of that. And amazing, people bring such diverse background experiences, and my earpiece keeps falling out. But you know what? We're going to have a wonderful conversation about tackling challenges and learning how to harness your potential. Tackling challenges can be really scary. Take us through a journey of what are some of the things that you've needed to tackle head on, Karen, and what are some of the insights and lessons you can share with us from tackling those?
Yeah, it's a great question. My company is 12 years old now, and so we have gone through just a myriad of changes. I think one of the big ones that affected so many women in business was COVID. My business, I received phone calls on March 12th of 2020. Every single event on my calendar canceled in the morning. And then at night, my mom died. And I thought, holy cow, I don't even know how to go forward in the world. And I don't know if I'll have a business. I just don't know how I'm going to do this. And so I sat on the couch, like, a few of us did, with a tub of ice cream, a big tub, a soup ladle, and Netflix with the remote control. And I did that for 3 days. And then I thought, my damn, this is not going to be my story. And this is not how I'm going to go through this time in the world and this time in my life. And so at that point, I really leaned into the idea of by damn. I was like, by damn, this is not what it's going to be like. I'm going to get healthier and I'm going to have a stronger business when I come out of this. So I created a podcast, or not a podcast, pardon me, a webinar called By Damn. And I offered it to over 2,000 businesses for free and just helped them figure out how to pivot. And it got me back in the game. It introduced me to new people, and it reminded me that when we give, we get, especially if we give just to give. It was an incredible experience, but man, it was scary.
Oh, wow. And, you've probably heard this many times, but, very sorry that you've had to go through that. Many people went through incredible challenges, but it really sounds as if, after the 3 days, you thought, hang on a moment, there's a number of different options that I can choose to take. I'm going to choose this. Was that something that had been developed in you? Had you observed that through people that you were close with? What was it that really lit that fire in you, that spark? Is that something you've always had? What can you share around this?
Yeah, again, it's a great question. I have not always had that. When I was in high school, I was told I was too stupid to go to college by a teacher that I believed. And
Mm.
I didn't go home to my parents and say, I'd heard this. My mom was too busy. And my dad would have said, oh, I knew it. I knew Zena was smarter than you and that Tammy was more clever than you. And so, to prove I wasn't stupid, I ran away with a boy from the next town over because, that's not stupid. And then we got married and then we got pregnant. And then I graduated from high school. But during that time, I was so shy, I couldn't talk to three people at once without crying. And that was really the first time that I had to dig in and think, what is the life that I want to have? How do I want to show up in the world? And now I speak to groups of up to 10,000 people, and I've written 5 books. I'm on my 6th right now because I dug in, and I had that cute boy from the next town is my husband of 43 years. And he has always had his hand right on my shoulder and saying, you can do this. So that's why I try to show up for other people. And I think, so that's what got me through it, is that person saying, you can do this.
Yes. I love that you had someone in your corner, because how often do we hear something from someone? I mean, thanks so much, teacher, for sharing that, speaking that over a young child. I mean,
Right.
my goodness. But I love that you had that support person, and look how you have not let that conversation or that one comment completely jeopardize the rest of your life. What would you say to someone then, Karen, who maybe doesn't have someone like your beautiful
Mhm,
husband
mhm.
of now 40 something years that is there to say, you know what, that is complete lie. You're not going to bring that on board. You're not going to own that. In fact, this is who you are. What would you say to that person? Because obviously you've been passionate about this, so passionate that you're now writing your 6th book. So what insight or what piece of advice would you share to someone that does not have anyone in their corners speaking hope, possibility, potential over them?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think we're in such an amazing place in the world that if you need that in your life, you can find it. It might not be somebody who can physically touch you and say, you can do this, but you can look to people like you can look to people like me. We've got um, podcasts. I put out a Monday video every week that starts with Happy Monday and ends with I'm so glad there's you. I think that we have to look to the people that we can just tune into and say that person really inspires me. But there's also beauty in just sitting alone with yourself, even if you are not in a good spot. If you are, I call them the red D's, it's after a divorce or disease or some form of disaster. If you just sit with yourself and quietly listen to what you know and what is in your heart, when you seriously listen to that and maybe do a little bit of writing, you can support yourself. And I think we sometimes forget that we can support ourselves through these incredible times of change. And so that's what I would say: lean into yourself and lean into people like you and I and all of the millions of other really amazing people out there in the world who will for free speak over you, that you can do so much more, that you deserve your next, you deserve every goal.
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize that it also is and starts with you. And I love that introspective, not waiting actually for someone to say something. that person should be you, because you could have 10, 20, 100 people saying things about you and to you, nice things, encouraging things. Yet if your internal voice is not repeating that or thinks,
Mhm.
oh no, they're only saying that, you can completely, again, not take that on board. And that can really have you go off the rails as well, and all sorts of, unhelpful decisions and so forth. So I think that that's really important, isn't it? Starts with you.
Yeah, it really, really is. Just a very brief story here. I was working with teen leaders last week, and at the end, there was a young man that we spoke over, and said to him, put my hand on his shoulder, and one of his friends did too, and we both said, "I believe in you," and he just fell to his knees, and he said, "People have said that before, but I never felt like they meant it, and I never heard it." And he's changed in 4 days since we left that situation. His life has changed because we said it like we meant it, and he actually was in a place where he could hear it.
Yeah. I remember an activity we did years ago. It was similar to what you've just said, that someone stood in the middle of us, and we had actually, prior to doing that, written down some empowering statements that would empower them. And you know what we did? We stood around them. They closed their eyes. Actually, we got them to sit down because after a
Mm.
while they would get a little bit dizzy. And we just whispered that all together, at the
Oh,
same time. And it was, I mean, even now getting goosebumps. And it was their own words repeated back, just whispers. And this is going to segue into the next topic that you want to talk about. True leadership comes from trusting your instincts and the lessons learned
mm.
from life's whispered truths. But it's the whispers around you, and that is so important too. And who are you allowing to speak over your life, even from the whispers? And some of those things can be unconscious as well, can't it? But that was an empowering thing. The people had to sit down because it just completely changed their outlook. And the exercise that you did with that young gentleman, my goodness, how is that going to impact how he moves forward in life?
Right. I love the way that you did that. We quite often tape a piece of paper to everybody's back and write one word that describes them. And then we stand in a circle and read those to one another. But I love the idea of the power of what you did, that just whispering that.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it's those, we often think that leadership is loud and it's extroverted, and I find that's why I wrote Quiet Leadership. I find that leadership quite often is the whispered words that you had to lean in to listen to, that
Yes.
really can impact you.
Yeah. And I think also too, and let's talk about this, the whispered truths, lives whispered truths. True leadership comes from trusting your instincts and the lessons learned. So often we rush from one project to the other without really reflecting on what can I
Mhm.
take away from this, even in situations of challenges. And when situations didn't have the outcome that you quite have expected or wanted to have from that situational project, there's a learnings and insights that can grow you in the right direction, but often we don't reflect on those. Have you found that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think especially if we have a failure that is a public failure, lots of
Mm.
times we want to run away from that instead of running into it. And it's when we have that public failure, that moment of, oh my gosh, I didn't do it and people saw, that if we stand as a true leader and say, yeah, this is why that didn't work, and this is how I'm going to change it next time, that our people get to learn from us and go forward. But you have to trust yourself that you truly will go forward.
Yes. How do you get to a place where you can trust your instincts? True leadership comes from trusting your instincts and the lessons
Mhm.
learned. What was that process for you when you did trust that quiet whisper?
Yeah, again, you are so good at the work that you do. It's doing it over and over and over, and continuously moving into new groups and new spaces so that I can have different experiences and different words whispered into my ear. I think quite often we get stuck in the same job with the same people, listening to the same voices, and those same experiences don't allow us the opportunity to truly grow. And so I was very deliberate about, I'm going to learn this, and then I'm going to learn this. And then when another opportunity came my way, I asked, is that going to teach me what I need to know next? And so I think that's really important, just continuously changing the things that are being whispered into our ears and our lives.
Yes. If I can circle back to the comment that you made, that when we found that the entire world was in lockdown and, as you said, your business was halted because you've got beautiful artwork behind you. So I would imagine that you were probably teaching or doing a lot of different things that required in person. And now we're left thinking, well, what now? What next? And then you decided, you know what, I'm going to run a webinar. And you did that for many, many people. I'm sure that there were things that you did and things that people whispered to you and insights that you shared that has really led you down to where you are today. And we mentioned in the introduction that you are now providing beautiful workshops with people who are in not only corporates that you were doing at restoration companies, but now with high school student leadership teams. Through that process, are there any standout whispers that someone else whispered, something that you've learned that continue to lead you down the path where you are today? What sort of hindsight insights did you learn over the last kind of four years?
Yeah, it's again such a great question. I think there were a couple. One, I started putting out Monday videos just because we have so many people in our world that are like, I hate Mondays, and I was like, well, you got the wrong attitude, and so I'm like, well, I love Mondays, and then people saying I can't start my day without you, and if I'm having a bad day, I go and find one of your Monday videos. And so I learned that my attitude really was transferable to other people, and not just my family, but to a much wider audience. That was really incredible. And then the reason we started working with schools, I was scared of teenagers. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Even though every summer I work with a group of teen leaders, and we've grown about 1,600 through that program. But the reason I finally leaned into schools was I was working with some teen leaders, and one of the students said, everybody comes in and tells us what not to do and how not to behave. And you were the first person that helped us figure out what to do instead.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a powerful moment for me to realize that my style really could impact other people, and that it was visible to this teen who really needed it. They really do want to figure out what they can do. They don't want to just be told. Nobody wants to just be told.
Absolutely. And then they're often, there's an attitude or often an entrepreneurial drive. I think the people I believe that there are naturally born leaders, and there are also skills that you can be taught to enhance, and build leadership qualities. But one character in true leaders will often challenge the status quo, won't they? If you're told you need to do something, I'm the opposite. I go, why? Why do I need to do it that way? Is there a better way? And there's almost like a defiance there, isn't there? Because you want to carve out your own way. And that's often where true leaders are developed and nurtured, because they've got a different way of seeing things, and they're starting to use the language and the approach, such as the feedback that you've got. I like the way you teach, Karen. It inspires me, because we're not cookie cutters when it comes to human beings. We've got different styles and ways that we appreciate being nurtured and taught and so forth. So what would you say then to someone who is in the throes of hearing a lot of stuff and it's been unhelpful for them? What would you say is a good place to start to be able to even understand, or be able to look for, where can I get some support? I hope this question is making sense, because it may be that the person and mentors that you have around you, the style in which they teach and mentor and support, isn't conducive to the style and approach that you appreciate and that you will allow to have flourish in you. What would you say then to someone?
Yeah, it's again, I appreciate that question very much. So I'll tell you another very short story. I got on the phone one day with somebody that I didn't know very well, and she turned out to be a psychic, and I wasn't sure if I believed in that or not. But she saw things in my house. I'm like, oh my gosh, she was in Chicago, I'm in Montana, and she saw things and she said things. I was like, oh, this is so real. And then she said, you know the problem with you, Karen? And I was like, well, that is a brave statement for somebody I'm just meeting. And she said, the problem with you is you've let everybody else's bullshit get stuck to you. And it made me stop. As she said, you take everybody's problem and you stick it on your heart and you stick it on your arm and you carry it on your back, whatever their problems are, whatever their needs are. And she said, as long as you do that, you will never have the energy you need to do the work that you're doing. And so I was privileged that I could get away for a weekend by myself into the mountains, into a beautiful space. And I went and really thought about that. I thought about, what do I have stuck to me right now? And do those people really do they want to stick it to me? And do I want to have it there? And so then this is an exercise that I think everybody should do. I wrote down all of the words, the negative words that I described myself with. And then I wrote down all of the positive words that people who loved me described me with. And I sat and contemplated and meditated on those two lists for a very long time. And I decided that I would burn the one that I didn't want to carry away with me. And so I burned the list of negative words and kept the list of positive words. And I put it under my pillow and I slept with it. And it's currently in my sock drawer. And anybody can do that, right? We can just stop and we can say, this is what's been said that's positive, and this is what's negative, and which do I want? And when I did that, I never carried those heavy words with me again. And I don't let people's bullshit get stuck to me. I talk about that in Quiet Leadership. You just have to ask yourself, what do I want to do with this piece that I'm being given? Pardon the language, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so
No, it's so true. What I love about that is it really does show people that no matter whether you've got all of these labels that have been and maybe inadvertently you've allowed to be stuck to you, guess what? You can rip those suckers off and you can even burn them,
right.
The choice is yours. And so you can replace it with the stickers that you do and the labels that you do want to walk around with instead. So let's talk about, love that, thank you. Let's talk about why your passion and insights matter, the importance of creating meaningful change in the world. Why is this so important?
So this is one of the things, again, that I realized when I was doing the By Damn series for other businesses, that if we stop and think about what our passion is and what we want to do for the world. So I've got a couple passions. One is with the team building and helping people collaborate creatively and really get along. And part of it is lifting individuals up. But what I realized is that it doesn't matter what we want to do, what we've been inspired to be passionate about. There is somebody in the world right now who is praying for that. And when you think of all of the times that you have prayed for help and you've prayed for inspiration, you're more able to transfer that to, there's somebody else praying for this thing, this niggling thing that I have to do right now. And when you lean into that, everything happens. Your passion takes hold and doors open and it becomes really possible for you. That's been my experience. How do you feel?
I agree. But you know what? Sometimes I think that as individuals, sometimes we haven't even got clarity on what does light us up. What are we passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
Especially women, because we're so often putting our needs, our desires, our goals, our dreams to the back burner because we've got kids, we've got family, we've got, external responsibilities. And I think the first and foremost is to, what am I passionate about?
Yeah.
What is that? Do you find that too? So often women, if we were asked, what is it that you want? And that's half the problem. We know that we want something different than what we have, but have we actually defined what that is? And do we know when we may have achieved that? That's also another thing that I think we often struggle with. We don't know what that is. How will we be feeling? What is the evidence to prove to ourselves that I'm actually enjoying this. This is what I'm passionate about. And this is what I want more of. This is what will enable me to help to create more meaningful change in the world. We have to define what that is for us first. What do you
Yeah,
think?
we really do. And I don't think we do that well sometimes. So I often ask people to start with, what don't you want it to look like?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll list the mess that they've got going on right now. And then we'll talk about, so if you're going to set this new goal, I call it a next, this thing that you're chasing, this next, it can't be your mom's goal for you. And it shouldn't be your spouse's or your ex-boyfriend's goal for you. It needs to be your goal for you. And a lot of times women really do have to stop and think about that, because they are in the middle of children and parents and, oh my gosh, all of it, and careers. But when you stop and think about what you don't want, a lot of times you can find clarity in that.
It's a good springboard. I do that often too when you're in a sticky situation. I will give myself 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes, Anne Marie, and you can just release that, all of the things that, and then stop. What can you do? Change that around. And often it's the change of language that can really, spark you in the right direction. But I love that. What don't you want? We're very good at that. And often that's what we continue to express. We're not expressing what it is that we do want. And I believe that your words that you have uttered manifest or can
Mhm,
manifest. So if
mhm.
you're constantly declaring out there in the world that I don't like this and I don't like that and I don't like that, guess what? You're going to get more of that because you've declared it. That is in your spectrum, that is in your focus. So twist that around and say it opposite. What do you want? And then from there you can start taking the actions and the steps, or even learning what are some things that I need to change to be able to move forward on that. What do you think? What are some things you can
Yeah,
share?
I absolutely agree with you. One of the examples I love to share about that is one time I pulled up to an ATM and the ticket from the person ahead of me was still there. And I looked at the number and I was like, oh my gosh, who has that much money in their bank account? And then I thought, well, I want that much money in my bank account. And I focused in on that. I had it on the scroll on my computer screen and I wrote it all kinds of places. And pretty soon, rather quickly, I had that dollar amount in my bank account. But I had said, I want that amount. I didn't say that I wanted to keep that amount. So the next day, we wrote a check for 2 huge insurance payments and our income taxes, and that money was no longer in my account. And so that's what I learned. You have to be really clear. You have to say, I want to keep that money in my account. Right?
Yes.
You have to be really clear. Not only, don't say, I don't want to be broke. You have to say, this is what number should be here.
Yes. Yeah. That's that saying, be careful what you ask for because it will often, you'll often achieve that, but be very specific. The good thing is you've proved the evidence you have proved that you can generate that. Guess what? You can generate that again. I recently within a group with some other women said, often we reflect on money and money can be a real issue. Time can be as well. And you can
Mhm.
interchange time and money. Never have enough time, never have enough time to do my own things that I want to do and so forth. Similarly, we can have similar conversations around money, but with time and money, I've heard this from mentors and other people have said it. You probably all have as well. You can always make have more money or make more money, but you can't get back the time that you have right here and now. And so often just making that slight change can then open up the path to a lot more opportunity that perhaps is right there in front of you. You just missed, you just didn't see them as opportunities.
Yes, and really truly getting control of either your time or your money, but I think especially time, getting control of your time and thinking about, is this how I want to spend this minute is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just bring it all the way around to how we started the call as we finish off. Again, it's so important. We talked about, what are people saying in and around you, to you, about you? Are you sticking those labels on and carrying them around with you? And similarly, what are things that you are saying about yourself? Is that empowering you or disempowering you? And there's certainly steps that you can take to be able to change that so that you can finally get that result that you're wanting to get and then have the passion. Your insights matter and the importance of creating meaningful change in the world. We've just scratched the surface, Karen. There's so much more to that. So if people have listened today or watched and would like to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to connect?
Great question. Facebook is great, LinkedIn is great, or Karen D as in dog 144 at Gmail. Anybody who just pops me a note and says that they listen to this webinar, or pardon me, this podcast, pardon me, old language, this podcast, I will send them a copy of What's Next, which really it helps people to think about, where am I going? What am I trying to
Yes.
do?
Yeah. And that's important, isn't it? It really kind of
Mm,
speaks to what we were talking about. We often are not achieving what we want because while we know what we're having right now is not what we want, we haven't declared and actually specified what is it that I want, so that you can continue to take that intentional steps toward that. And I'm sure that resource, What Next, guides people through that, because if it's not something that you have done yourself, it takes a bit of guidance through that to set yourself up, that you can support yourself, set yourself up for success, doesn't it? That process, and I'm sure that resource will help them.
Yes, you're so wise. It absolutely does. And I think that it requires two things to go with that. One is honoring your life. And when you're busy, you're busy. And when you're sick, you're sick. And instead of being worried, am I balanced right now? Just worry, am I honoring my life and my time? That's really important. And then always having a next to look forward to, that next thing you're chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Well, thanks once again for coming on the show, Karen.
Thank you so much. You're marvelous at this role.
Thank you. Hey, it's Anne-Marie. Before I go, are you a coach or a consultant who feels like the world's best kept secret? Your experience is vast, yet secretly you're frustrated because despite all of your hard work, you're just not getting the visibility, leads, or new clients you'd hope for, and you don't know why? I've created free training and resources that'll help you build visibility, generate leads, and enroll dream clients with ease, because you're seen as a trusted authority, even in a crowded marketplace. And you've positioned yourself as the choice versus just a choice with your unique, uncopyable, and unforgettable brand and message. And you're able to nurture listeners into leads from your podcast, even from your first episode. To access these free resources, go to ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/community. That's ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/community.